So in several of our previous classes, I've mentioned Ibn Arabi, but tonight we're going to devote all of our attention to him. He is known as the reviver of religion and the greatest master. His father was an Arab of noble pedigree, originally from Yemen. So his son became known as the Arab or El Arabi in Arabic. He was born in 1165 in the Common Era in the town of Murcia in Al-Andalus, which is in the southeastern corner of present-day Spain. Oh, you know what? I forgot to put the maps up. My goodness. Okay, just hang on a second. I have to step away for a second. Hang on.
Okay. Take a deep breath. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Lots of details, eh?
Are you able to see my screen at this point?
No, the
Okay.
screen sharing was there, but now it's gone.
Okay, good. I just didn't want to. How did I forget to do that?
You've got a lot on your mind. Too much politics.
Okay, that's one. And the other. Okay, I'm almost done. Okay, now I'm ready. Okay, so here's a map of present-day Spain, and you can see down here in the bottom corner is Murcia. So that's where Ibn Arabi was born. Here's Gibraltar, where Jack visited, way down at the tip of Europe. Okay. So if I go back here, you can see from this chart that I sent out last week, or was it 2 weeks ago? Ibn Arabi was born almost 2 centuries after Ibn Sina. So here's Ibn Sina at 1037, his death date, and Ibn Arabi's is 2 centuries later. And interestingly enough, both he and Rumi were alive at the same time for 33 years. As far as scholars know, they did not actually meet. They were in different geographical areas. And Rumi, who we are going to meet next week, or 2 weeks from now, I should say, was born 42 years after Ibn Arabi. He also allegedly met Attar in Nishapur as a teenager. And as you can see from the chart, Rumi died 33 years after Ibn Arabi. So that just gives you a sense. You can see how many people there are in a very short period of time. This was a huge time of creativity in Islam. It was really its peak, actually. Okay.
Mark, do you see you have a question from Roxanne and Rob?
Oh, okay. I didn't notice. Yes, go ahead, please.
Mark, these several of these people are known to me. Their names are known.
Mm-hmm.
Ibn Arabi of course, is referred to often, but can you try and expand a little bit on why he was so renowned?
Well, we will give some sense of that tonight, but he had an encyclopedic knowledge of all of the Islamic sciences, by which I mean all the things like commentaries on the Quran, all of the traditions of the Quran, all of the jurisprudence that came out of it through the Sharia. But he also had an enormous grasp of mysticism. All the people who had come before him, he knew in detail. And then there was the actual experience that he had, which began very early in his life, where he was diving into the imaginal realm on a regular basis, every day almost. So together, all that combined to make his comments incredibly pertinent to people around him. Plus, he was massively prolix in his writings. So there's an effort right now to take his most lengthy piece, the Meccan Revelations, and translate them into English. They're expecting it to be, I think, 37 volumes of 300 pages each. So that's just one of the 240 books or so that we have of his. That was by far the longest, but you can see that this was a guy who knew everything. So that's why he's so famous. I hope that there's a pencil sketch that helps.
Thank you.
So for the sake of completeness, I had initially planned to include 3 other important guides in this chart who lived before and after this classical period. Attar, who was the author of the Conference of the Birds, died 19 years before Ibn Arabi. Hafez, the master Persian poet, died 116 years after Rumi. Mullah Sadra, who is arguably the single most important and influential philosopher in the Iranian world in the last 5 centuries, was born 300 years after the death of Rumi. And there's no way we can investigate this massive literary output in such a short course. Well, almost a lifetime would be required to do it justice. So it would take us too far afield to examine the life of Ibn Arabi in any detail. If you're interested in learning more about him, the most authoritative biography is still Claude Adas's 1993 work, Quest for the Red Sulphur, The Life of Ibn Arabi. She's a French scholar whose father was a pioneer of scholarship in Ibn Arabi. So we actually scrutinized the Quranic story of Moses's meeting with Khidr in class number 6. So we're in a really good position to delve into the 4 separate occasions during which Ibn Arabi met Khidr in person. In each circumstance, it appears that the imaginal realm intersected with the physical world. So, let's talk about the first meeting. Ibn Arabi has preserved 2 accounts of his first meeting with his invisible master in the Meccan Revelations. Now, this occurred in Seville. Let's see if we can find Seville. Here it is down here. When he was about 20 years old. So this would be 1185. His youthfulness explains the lack of propriety which he later admitted to. At that time, he still had much to learn about the rules of proper behavior governing the relationships between disciples and masters. Okay, so now we're going to need some volunteer readers. Whoa, there he is. Milton's always first on the bat. Excellent. Okay, sir. Oh, you're not.
A difference of opinion arose between me and my master, Abul Abbas al-Arabi, regarding the identity of a person whose coming the Prophet had announced, i.e. the Mahdi. He, Sheikh Arabi, said to me, "The reference is to so-and-so, son of so-and-so," and he mentioned someone whom I knew by name. I had never seen the person, but I had met his cousin. I expressed skepticism and refused to accept what the Sheikh had said about this individual because I had an infallible perception, basira, regarding the man in question. As it happens, there can be no doubting the fact that later the Sheikh changed his opinion, but he suffered inwardly as a result of my attitude, although I was unaware of this, because at the time I was only in my early stages.
Okay, thank you. Now, it continues, and maybe Margaret can finish this particular passage off. This is still the first account of the first meeting.
I left him to return home. On the way, I was accosted by someone whom I did not know. First of all, this person greeted me with a great deal of love and affection in his gesture. Then he said to me, "Accept what Sheikh Abu Labas says about so-and-so." I understood what he was asking. I immediately returned to the Sheikh to let him know what had happened to me. When I appeared before him, he said to me, "Oh, Abu Allah, is it going to be necessary for Khidr to come to you every time you hesitate to admit what I say and tell you, except what so-and-so says? And how is that going to happen each time you refuse to accept my opinion?" I replied, "The door of repentance is open." He said, "The repentance is accepted." Claude Das.
Okay, thank you. So you'll notice here we've got a different spelling of Khidr. This is maybe Durham's going to be able to explain to us why there are different spellings, but maybe for tonight's purposes, you could just read that as Khidr, so you know that it's the same guy. Anyway, I should have said that before you read, Margaret. I don't mean to embarrass you. Okay, so the second account of the same incident is recorded by Ibn Arabi in a later passage in the Meccan Revelations. This time he supplies further details about Khidr and about the nature of this particular instruction. Okay, so Lisa's going to read this number 3, I see.
Khidr's name is Bali B. Malakan. He was in an army and was sent by the commander in search of water, which they had run short of. He discovered and drank from the source of life, and so it is that he is still living now. He had no idea that God had granted immortality to whoever drinks that water. I met him in Seville, and he taught me to submit to spiritual masters and not contradict them. In fact, on that very day, I had contradicted one of my teachers on a particular issue and was just leaving him. I then encountered Khidr in the quarter of the Kus al-Haniya, and he said to me, "Accept what the Sheikh says." I returned immediately to the Sheikh. When I arrived at his place, even before I could speak a word, he said to me, "O Muhammad, does this mean that every time you contradict me, I will have to ask Khidr to instruct you in submission to the masters?
Okay. Well, and this particular reading continues, and I think Hangame has raised her hand, so I'll ask her to read this. Oops, maybe I should just, there.
Reading 4. I replied, "Master, are you saying that the person who gave me this instruction was Khidr?" He answered, "Yes." I said in reply, "Glory be to God for this teaching. But even so, things will turn out just as I said they would." Sometime later, I visited the Sheikh and saw that he had come round to my opinion. He said to me, "It was I who was wrong, and you who were right." I replied, "Master, now I understand why Khidr only instructed me to submission and did not say that you were right in the matter. To the extent that legal statutes were not involved, I ought not to have contradicted you, but if they had been involved, it would have been forbidden me to stay silent.
Okay, so he's kind of a cheeky guy. He was young and feeling his oats, I guess. Okay, so this is an example of the paradoxical relationship Ibn Arabi had with the countless visible masters he encountered during his lifetime. And I saw one list that suggested there were 300 different masters that he met over the life of his own lifetime. As a young disciple, Ibn Arabi was hierarchically inferior to Arabi and others and owed them obedience. However, as a Gnostic endowed with an inner certainty, as well as having the guidance of the invisible master Khidr, he spoke the truth and in this particular case surpassed his master. Okay, so now let's go to this second meeting. This occurred 9 years later when he was 29. And I'm going to show you the map of Tunisia. So this is where he meets him this time, in Tunis. So you can see it's not that far from Murcia. Okay, so let's go back to the readings, and Durham is here ready to read number 5 for us.
Sure. I was in the port of Tunis on a small boat at sea when I was gripped by a pain in the stomach. While the other passengers slept, I went to the side of the boat to look out at the sea. Suddenly, in the light of the moon, which on that particular night was full, I caught sight of someone in the distance who was coming towards me walking on the water. As he drew level with me, he stopped and lifted one foot while balancing on the other. I saw that the sole of his foot was dry. He then did the same with his other foot, and I saw the same thing. After that, he spoke to me in a language which is unique to him. He then took his leave and went off in the direction of the lighthouse, which stood at the top of the hill, a good 2 miles away. It took him 3 paces to travel the distance.
Okay, so we're clearly not working with somebody in physical reality, although he's appearing in physical reality. So this is an insight for you into the kind of visitations people experience from the imaginal realm. So space and time do not mean the same thing to them as they do
That's
to
right.
us.
That's
And they're able to interact with this physical world without, well, they appear to be physical, but they're only a semblance of physicality. Okay. So meeting number 3 at the age of 30, so a year or so after this one in Tunis, it was Ibn Arabi's custom to practice something called siyaha, which is he describes as traveling across the earth to meditate on the spectacle of the vestiges of centuries gone by and nations that have passed away. And this is a practice that Baha'u'llah recommends to Baha'is. Not that they need to go out and do it all the time, but every once in a while it's worth thinking about how transitory everything in this world really is. So between 1193 and 1200, he visited different parts of Andalusia, which is Muslim Spain, and made several journeys of varying length to North Africa. In 1194, during one of these long periods of wandering, Ibn Arabi had his third encounter with Khidr. Intriguingly, this meeting also included a man whose rank was even higher than Khidr's. Okay, so Thomas, you're going to read the first half of this story, number 6.
Sometime later, after the second meeting with Khidr in Tunis, I set off on a journey along the coast of North Africa in the company of a man who denied the miraculous power of the saints. I stopped off in a ruined mosque to perform the midday prayer together with my companion. At the same moment, a group of those who wander remote from the world entered the mosque with the same intention of performing the prayer. Among them was the man who had spoken to me at sea and whom I had been told was Khidr. There was also another man of high rank who was hierarchically superior to Khidr. I had already met him previously, and we had become bound by ties of friendship. I got up and went to greet him. He greeted me in turn and expressed his joy at seeing me. Then he moved forward to direct the prayer.
Okay, thank you. Now, Elizabeth, you get to deliver the punchline here.
After we had finished the prayer, the Imam started to leave. I followed him as he moved towards the door of the mosque, which faced to the west and looked out over the ocean in the direction of a place called Bakar. I just started talking with him at the door to the mosque when the man who I said was Khidr took a small prayer rug, which was stored in the mihrab, stretched it out in the air, 7 cubits above the ground, got onto it to perform the supererogatory prayer. I said to my traveling companion, "Do you see that man, what he's doing?" He asked me to go over and question him, so I left my companion, went over to see Khidr. When he had finished his prayers, I greeted him and recited some verses to him. He said to me, "I only did this for the sake of that unbeliever," and he pointed to my companion who denied the miracle of the saints and sitting in a corner of the mosque was watching us. We then left for Rota.
7 cubits. It's quite a long way up. A cubit, well, I've always thought of it as the distance from your elbow to the tip of your fingers. So that's probably 5 feet or 6 feet up. Okay. So it's unclear who this person who was superior to Khidr actually was. Notice that Ibn Arabi indicates that they had previously met and had become friends. Adas offers a couple of possible speculative suggestions, but these are inconclusive. Suffice it to say that Ibn Arabi recognized, despite their personal relationship, Khidr did not actually occupy the highest rank among the spiritual beings known to Ibn Arabi. Okay, so let's get to the last, well, it's not the last, but the last we're going to talk about, meeting number 4. This is a few years later in 1204 in Mosul in northern Iraq. Ibn Arabi was invested with the mantle of Khidr, the khirqa, by a disciple of the famous Khadib al-Ban. As the culmination of his relationship with this invisible master, this investiture made Ibn Arabi revise his opinion about the profundity of significance of such investitures. Here is Ibn Arabi's own explanation of this encounter with Khidr, this time through one of the people Khidr had earlier transformed, following the same spiritual procedure. Okay, Ingrid, take it away, number 8. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
One of my teachers, Ali B. Abd Allah Bijami, who was a companion of Ali al-Mutawakkil and Khadib al-Ban, had met Khidr. He used to live in his garden outside Mosul. Khidr had invested him with the khirqa in the presence of Khadib al-Ban. He in turn transmitted it to me on the very same spot in his garden where he had received it from Khidr, and in the same way that it had been performed in his case.
Thank you. So at this point, we still don't really know what this khirqa is.
I think it's like we call it khirqa. It's like a coat.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Thank you.
And he's going to actually explain it, I think. Let's see how close it is to what you say. Until this time, Ibn Arabi had thought of such investitures with the khirqa as expressions of companionship. Now he understood it as a means by which a master produces an immediate transformation in his disciple. So here is how Ibn Arabi came to see this ritual. Number 9. So is it Rob or Roxanne this time?
Rob.
Okay.
When the masters of spiritual states perceive some imperfection in one of their companions and wish to perfect that person's state, they resort to the custom of meeting with the person alone. The master then takes the piece of clothing he is wearing in the spiritual state he is in at that particular moment, removes it, and puts it on the man whom he wishes to guide to perfection. He then holds the man closely to him, and the master's state spreads to his disciple, who thereby attains to the desired perfection. This is the clothing, as I understand it, and as it has been transmitted by our masters.
Uh-huh. So that it is a piece of clothing or a coat. But it's a very special kind of coat.
It is actually very rough textile. Because this is the Sufi will wear that in his apostrophe to the Almighty. And it is really, it means khirqa. It is khirqa, which means the piece of cloth. You know, it's not a well-designed or well-sewn clothing. It looks very simple, rough, and the material also is rough. It's like you're wearing wool on your body. You see how it scratches your skin, kind of. But as a servant to the Almighty, you have to accept that. You know, it's interesting subject.
Yeah, it's interesting when scholars try to figure out where the term Sufi came from. The first thing they do is they talk about suf, which means wool.
Exactly.
So this is an excellent description that you've just given. Thank you so much.
If I may add one thing about the word Khidr here, it's mentioned even with Claude Adas. He wrote the 3 types. And just for information, I've seen about 11 types of different ways of writing it by the West. And it depends. If it is from Turkey, in Turkey, there is no kh in their language. They can't say it. They will say h, ha, hedr. So it depends where it came from. They translate it into the way they like. But you can check on the internet, you'll find about 10, 12 spelling. And even in his Claude Dadas, he brought it in different 3 types. One with A accent, one with I, and one with anyway, there were 3 types. But one thing important, in Arabic, we will never call Khidr without al-Khidr. Like you cannot say Makkiyah, Futuhat Makkiyah. You say Futuhat al-Makkiyah. This is like a proper noun of a high value, of supreme value. So in Arabic, we don't say Khidr. No, we have to say al-Khidr.
Good. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. So I've been saying it wrong the whole course. How do you like that?
Yeah.
Jeez. I
No,
need to
this is a
travel more.
respect. It's a respect, you know, for
Mhm.
for the person. We put the L on it.
Okay. And the L means the in English, right? Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh boy. Well, now you've shaken my confidence, Durham. I don't trust myself anymore.
Yeah, like you're saying al-Arabi, Ibn al-Arabi, al-Arabi.
Mhm. Okay, so this fourth encounter with Al-Hizra is thus symbolized an unprecedented level of identification with his invisible master. This investiture with the mantle, the khirqa, can be conferred in at least three ways: directly by Khizra, by an intermediary who has himself received it from Al-Khizra, or even by one who has received it from the first intermediary. Due to the trans-historical significance of this rite, none of these options detract from the effectiveness of the rite. And we have a little bit more here from Henri Corbin about that. And Sherry is here to read that for us.
Whether there are one or several intermediaries or none, the affiliation by identification with Al-Khidra's state is accomplished in the longitudinal order connecting the visible with the invisible, an order cutting vertically across the latitudinal order of historical successions, generations, and connections. It is and remains a direct affiliation with the divine world, transcending all social ties and conventions. Accordingly, its significance remains transhistorical, a kind of antidote to the widespread obsession with the trend of history. Henri Corbin.
Okay, thank you. So now that we've examined four of Ibn Arabi's encounters with his invisible master, let's see if we can further uncover the identity of Al-Khizra. So what role did he play and does he continue to play in the lives of Islamic mystics? As I found out during my research, there is a considerable mass of material from divergent sources such as prophetology, folklore, and alchemy concerning this mysterious figure. One of the more reliable descriptions of him appears in the Oxford Dictionary of World Religions, and Tamrat has agreed to read this one for us. Oh, yeah.
Okay. In Islam, Al-Khidr is the mystical guide. He is at once human and angelic, mundane and celestial. He is associated with the color green, the highest of colors in Islamic cosmology. According to the Sufis, Al-Khidr is the immortal guide possessing wisdom and powers beyond human understanding. He can manifest himself at many places at the same time, become invisible at will, and fly through the air.
Okay, thank you. Lots to ponder in that one. Okay. So Henri Corbin asks the question, does Khizra in this relationship with his disciples figure as an archetype, according to the definition established by analytical psychology, or as a distinct and enduring personality? In other words, is Al-Khizr a real person, an archetype, or something else altogether? And of course, the word archetype I'm interested in because of the associations with Carl Jung that we'll see later. A list of his numerous earthly appearances raises a problem which defies historical analysis. Not only was he a contemporary of Moses in the 13th century BC, as described in the Quran. According to certain traditions, Khidr was also a descendant of Noah in the fifth generation. How can this be true when there are so many stories of him appearing to prominent Muslims centuries later? Reports of Khidr challenge our conventional understanding of historical time. As Corbin says, unless we situate these events in the Alam al-Mithal, we shall never find a rational explanation of the Quran episode in which Khidr meets Moses as if they were contemporaries. Pieces of evidence like these led Corbin to conclude that Khidr must be a transhistorical being. So does such a transhistorical status mean that Khidr was an archetype in the psychological sense given the term by Carl Jung? In Jung's analytical psychology, human beings are understood to be composed of both conscious and unconscious dimensions. He went on to discover that we each have a personal unconscious and a connection with what he termed the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious acts like a storage facility for a wide range of archetypes, some of which everyone encounters at different points in their lives. Okay, Linda, you get to read from the Bible, the Wikipedia Bible, which is actually pretty good.
Reading number 12. Jungian archetypes are a concept from psychology that refers to a universal inherited idea, pattern of thought, or image that is present in the collective unconscious of all human beings. The psychic counterpart of instinct, archetypes are thought to be the basis of many of the common themes and symbols that appear in stories, myths, and dreams across different cultures and societies. Some examples of archetypes include those of the mother, the child, the trickster, and the flood, among others. According to Jung, archetypes are innate patterns of thought and behavior that strive for realization within an individual's environment. This process of actualization influences the degree of individuation or the development of the individual's unique identity. For instance, the presence of a maternal figure who closely matches the child's idealized concept of a mother can invoke innate expectations and activate the mother archetype in the child's mind. This archetype is incorporated into the child's personal unconscious as a mother complex, which is a functional unit of the personal unconscious that is analogous to an archetype in the collective unconscious.
Well, there's a lot in there, but we're not going to spend much time thinking about that tonight. We will later. So Corbin, who was intimately familiar with Jung's prodigious output, dismisses the possibility that Khidr was an archetype because it would mean that he would lose his reality and become a figment of the imagination. If that's the case, then surely Khidr must be a real individual. Again, Corbin discounts this possibility. So Nina, would you be so kind as to read number 13?
If we speak of him as a real person, we shall no longer be able to characterize the difference in structure between Khidr's relationship with his disciple and the relationship that any other sheikh on this earth can have with his. In this case, Khidr numerically one faces a popularity of disciples in a relationship which is hardly compatible with the fervent sentiment of the one consorting with the one. In short, these answers are not adequate to the phenomenon of of Khidra's person. Henry Corbin.
Hmm. Okay, that's great. Thank you. So if Khidr is neither an archetype nor a real person, what other possibility is there? Corbin relies on his extensive knowledge of the writings of the Persian mystic Sukharwardi to suggest an alternative. I see Bill has his hand raised for number 14. Thank you so much.
In one of the recitals that make up Sukharwardi's spiritual autobiography, that of the Purple Archangel, the mystic is initiated into the secret which enables him to ascend Mount Oph, that is, the cosmic mountain, and to attain to the spring of life. He is frightened at the thought of the difficulties of the quest, but the angel says to him, "Put on the sandals of Khidr," and his concluding words, "He who bathes in that spring will be preserved forever for all taint." If someone has discovered the meaning of the mystic truth, it means that he has attained to that spring. If you are Khidr, you too can ascend Mount Oph without difficulty.
So I see you're sitting back from the screen here. That's actually a Q, so it's Kaf. Right, Mount Kaf. It's the center of the world. So a very important mystic concept. Yeah, the cosmic mountain. No, don't worry about it. That's entirely understandable. So what then does it mean to put on the sandals of Khidr? In other words, what does it mean to become the disciple of Khidr? When Ibn Arabi was invested with the mantle of Khidr in the fourth encounter with his invisible master, we learned that Ibn Arabi was empowered with the same spiritual state as the master who conferred the mantle on him, a master who had earlier been endowed with the same mantle by Khidr himself. In Sukharwardi's narrative, the act of putting on the sandals of Khidr is a metaphorical way of describing the same process of identifying oneself with Khidr as Ibn Arabi had experienced. Here one immediately thinks of learning how to walk in someone else's moccasins. Only by first becoming Khidr will ascending the cosmic mountain and drinking from the spring of life be accomplished without difficulty. Okay, so here we are at number 15, and it's over to Roxanne this time. Nope. Okay.
Sorry.
To have him as a master and and initiant, the one who initiates, is to be obligated to be what he himself is. And Khidr is the master of all those who are masterless, because he shows all those whose master he is how to be what he himself is. He who has attained the spring of life, the eternal youth, is, as Sukharwardi's recital makes clear, if you are Khidr, he who has attained Hakika, the mystic esoteric truth, and Khidr is the master of all these because he shows each one how to attain the spiritual state which he himself has attained and which he typifies. His relationship with each one is the relationship of the exemplar or the exemplified with him who exemplifies it. This is what enables him to be at once his own person and an archetype, and it is by being one and the other that he is able to be each man's master, because he exemplifies himself as many times as he has disciples, and his role is to reveal each disciple to himself. Henri Corbin.
This is a very important passage. I'm thinking from a Baha'i perspective for a minute here. If we're not allowed to have physical master-disciple relationships in this religion, who do we turn to for guidance? You saw the word exemplar in here. Who would be the exemplar in the Baha'i faith?
Abdul-Baha.
Is it possible for us to contact Abdu'l-Baha in the imaginal realm for guidance? That's what's really behind all of my creation here. We have to have some place to have guidance given to us that relates to us specifically. And Abdu'l-Baha, I think, would be the one to deliver it. So all these characteristics that are being described of Al-Khidr, I think, apply to some degree to Abdu'l-Baha. So that's something to park in the back of your mind as you're reading some of this material.
You see, it is also Al-Khidr did not show up to many people, but many of those that they met him, they were at a certain high level of purity, that they were worthy of such mithal, of such appearance to them.
Yeah.
So probably if we raise our station in our life to a certain level, that we can be inspired by the soul of Abdu'l-Baha.
So that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Very nice. Okay, so for Corbin then, Khidr is
Mark,
sorry.
I'm
Yes,
just
go
trying
ahead.
to find it, the introduction to the Tablet of Visitation for Abdu'l-Baha.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking through my prayer book right now to find it. I don't want to waste your time because I can't find it. But we had Tablet of Visitation 332. Getting close here.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm just getting close. When I have to flip pages in my prayer book, I don't do it well. Oh, yes, here we go. Whoso reciteth this prayer with lowliness and fervor will bring gladness and joy to the heart of this servant. It will be even as meeting him face to face.
Beautiful. Perfect.
And so I guess what I'm saying from here is you can have spiritual bonds without a physical appearance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Good. Good point.
Anyway, thanks.
That was quite useful. Thank you so much, David. So for Corbin then, Al-Khidr is simultaneously a real person and also an archetype. He appears to each of his disciples as a real person, while still being able to visit countless disciples at the same time in vastly different locations and across many centuries, a characteristic which implies that he is an archetype. For these reasons, Corbin concludes that Khidr is a person archetype. Curiously, the guidance he gives to each of his disciples is not exactly the same each time. He does not lead them all to the same goal, to the same theophany, as we've called it. That's a Greek word that we learned means a visible manifestation of God. Okay, Thomas, you're ready to read 16, I see. Thank you so much.
He leads each disciple to his own theophany, the theophany of which he personally is the witness, because that theophany corresponds to his inner heaven, to the form of his own being, to his eternal individuality, which in Ibn Arabi's words is that one of the divine names which is invested in him, the name by which he knows his God and by which God knows him. That is the interdependence between Rab and Mahrab, between the Lord of love and his vassal.
It's very interesting. There's a tablet of Abdu'l-Baha's in which he says that each one of us has a preference, if you like, for one of the divine names. It was sort of inborn in us. It's a natural inclination. And this is the same kind of point that is being made here. That there's sort of a path of least resistance, if you like, towards God inside each of us. So if you become acquainted with that, then it becomes easier to get to know him better, I guess is a kind of a weak way of saying it. So in other words, Khidr is responsible for helping his disciples to perceive their own divine nature, which Ibn Arabi tells us is the very same nature they possessed before they were given being by God in the first place. This divine nature is how they are known by God. In fact, it is their own Lord, the one they must serve. Khidr guides each of his disciples to the place where they can see their own inner heaven, the form of their own being, their eternal individuality. This is a profound spiritual reality about which many prominent Sufis have written differing ways. Here are the views of 4 prominent Sufis concerning the role played by the invisible master Khidr. And please note the generous use of symbolic language throughout this complex passage. Oh, David's is willing to try this one. Oh, great, good for you. See what you can make of some of these names. David, you still have your hand up. Was that from before, or is that wanting to read now?
No, I didn't put it up to read, but I'll gladly read. I'm sorry. I thought you meant another David. Here we go. In Semnani's words, we should say that Khidra's mission consists in enabling you to attain to the Khizra of your being. For it is in this inner depth, in this prophet of your being, that springs the water of life at the foot of the mystic Sinai, pole of the microcosm, center of the world, etc. This is also in keeping with the vision of our oasis, those who followed an invisible master, guided and initiated by Mansur Halaj's being of light, his angel, Attar, attains to the Mansur of his being, becomes Mansur in the course of the 50 passionate last pages of Halaj Nama. It also falls in with Ali Wafa's 14th century saying to the effect that in the voice of a Khidr, every spiritual, i.e. Sufi, hears the inspiration of his own Holy Spirit, just as every prophet perceives the spirit of his own prophecy in the form of an angel Gabriel. And this merely echoes the words of Abd al-Karim Jili, died 1424, concerning the Holy Spirit, the divine face of every being.
Very well done. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
That was a tough one. So here is Corbin's summary of the meaning of these lofty, diverse accounts. Oh, nobody's coming forward to read these last ones.
I'll go ahead anyway to do it.
Linda's agreed to do it then. Okay, let's try 18.
To become El Khidr is to have attained an aptitude for theophanic vision, for the encounter with the divine alter ego, for the ineffable dialogue which the genius of Ibn Arabi will nevertheless succeed in recounting.
Okay. So can anything further be said about this angel that so many mystics meet? Durham is going to read number 19.
Okay. This angel is not a simple messenger transmitting orders, nor the usual guardian angel, nor the angel evoked by the Sunnites in their discussions of which is superior, the man or his angel. The angel is bound up with the idea that the form under which each of the spirituals, i.e. the Sufis, knows God is also the form under which God knows him, because it is the form under which God reveals himself to himself in that man. Wow.
Yeah, that's worth a few minutes. That's got a lot of material packed into it.
That's heavy stuff, Mark.
Yes, it is. So by becoming Khidr, the mystic comes to know his true self, his own personal Lord. He is encountering the form of himself which is known by God. In Ibn Arabi's vocabulary, it is to meet his eternal individuality. Using Baha'u'llah's language, it is to meet the trust of God deep within you. Unless you meet this angel, the divine being inside you, your absolute individuality, the divine name invested in you will remain unknown and inaccessible. Now we can begin to see why Ibn Arabi attached such importance to the rite of investiture with the mantle of Khidr, and why he went on to confer it to so many of his own disciples. Okay, Elizabeth, we've got another powerful one here, number 20.
Through his rite, he makes known his intention of guiding each one of his disciples to the Khidr of his being. If you are Khidr, you can indeed do what Khidr does. This is perhaps the secret reason for which the doctrine of Ibn Arabi was so feared by the adepts of the literal religion, of the historical faith, hostile to the ta'wil, or of the dogma imposed uniformly on all. He, on the other hand, who is the disciple of Khidr, possesses sufficient inner strength to seek freely the teachings of all masters. This, the biography of Ibn Arabi, who frequented all the masters of his day and welcomed their teachings, offers living proof.
Okay, thank you. So again, the Arabic term tahwil can be translated as spiritual understanding. Corbin explains that etymologically it is the carrying back of a thing to its principle, of a symbol back to what it symbolizes. Performing this spiritual form of exegesis allows you to reach the hidden meaning of anything, its batin, its inner self. So now that we've reviewed the life of Ibn Arabi, let's take a look at a list of the characteristics of Khidr's world. Now, I've sent this out as an attachment, so you've all had a chance to look at this, and hopefully now it makes a little more sense since we've been through Ibn Arabi's experiences. I won't go through all of these right now. It would take us too long. We're already running out of time. But this is a very handy way of starting to comprehend what the imaginal world really is. This is a good doorway into that world, if you like. So let's see how Iranian Muslims understood this unnamed character in the Quranic story. Here's the way Corbin, who lived in Tehran for 4 months of every year for over 20 years, summarized Muslim thinkers' views of Khidr. Okay, so here we go with number 21, and that's Nina again.
Khidr is represented as Moses' guide, who initiates Moses into the science of predestination. Thus, he reveals himself to be the repository of an inspired divine science, superior to the law of Sharia. Thus, Khidr is superior to Moses insofar as Moses is a prophet invested with the mission of revealing a Sharia. He reveals to Moses precisely the secret, mystic truth, haqiqa, that transcends the Sharia, and this explains why the spiritually inaugurated by Khidr is free from the servitude of the literal religion. Henry Corbin.
Thank you. So that last sentence, he reveals to Moses precisely the secret mystic truth that transcends the Sharia. And this explains why the spirituality inaugurated by Khidr is free from the servitude of the literal religion. This reveals Corbin's personal preference for the esoteric over the exoteric value of religion. Is his spirituality actually superior to that of the religion of Muhammad? Many recent Islamic scholars have criticized Corbin for his esoteric leanings. To my mind, their critiques do not invalidate his long list of unique contributions to Islamic studies, but they do draw attention to a bias of Corbin's that we need to be aware of when we refer to his writings and translations. In this regard, you are probably aware that Baha'u'llah censored the Sufi belief that it is possible for a person to spiritually evolve to a point beyond the domain of the religious laws of Muhammad's faith. The following quotation is from the seventh of the seven valleys. Okay, Milton, that's number 22.
In all these journeys, the wayfarer must stray not a hair's breadth from the law. For this is indeed the secret of the path and the fruit of the tree of truth. In all these stages he must cling to the robe of obedience to all that hath been enjoined, and hold fast to the cord of shunning all that is forbidden, that he may partake of the cup of the law and be informed of the mysteries of truth. Baha'u'llah.
Okay. So at the end of class 6 on the meeting of Moses and Khidr in the Quran, we concluded that from a Baha'i point of view, Khidr is the communicator of guidance from the primal will. Think of Khidr as an envoy, an emissary or ambassador from Lahut, the realm of command. The fact that he appears as a person is imposed by human perceptual limitations. The same is true of the angel Gabriel, who transmitted the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad. So I want to end with a word about power. Each step up the ladder of the 5 divine presences, and remember they're Nasut, Malakut, Jabarut, Lahut, and Hahut. Each step increases the intensity of its reality. Therefore, experiences in the imaginal realm or Malakut are more real than those in the physical realm. Think of the vividness that characterizes your most memorable dreams. Other features are enhanced as well. 2 that I would like to single out this evening are motion and power. In a document published in American Baha'i in 1992, which belongs to the category of Pilgrim's Notes, William Sears describes his first meeting with Shoghi Effendi while on pilgrimage in April 1954. This excerpt focuses on the stunning dynamic force the guardian radiated. So who would like to read this very powerful last piece?
I'm volunteering Jack since he knows Shoghi.
Yes,
Well,
I think that's
you read
very
my
appropriate.
mind, Linda, because I was just going to volunteer.
Excellent.
Strangely enough, I just read William Sears' Pilgrim's Notes the other night, and here it is again. The overpowering feeling of motion which you associate with the guardian, never leaves you after that first meeting. Abdu'l-Baha's words live in the guardian. We must go forward. We can't stand still. That is stagnation. Movement, speed, action. Yet all is accomplished in an atmosphere of assurance and calm. The closer we are to him, the more active we become, the more accelerated our pace, yet the more sublime our attitude and the less panicky our methods. The guardian moves across the vast spaces to be conquered by the faith, as a cyclone moves. Its speed is astounding, yet at the heart of the cyclone, all is at peace as it moves. The farther one is from this tranquil center, the more violent the reaction. If we ever have withdrawn from the center and are on the outer fringes, we are torn to bits and destroyed. We must move with the power or be shattered by the impact. You can feel the heat of his pace. You are shaken by the draft of his passing. You can see the light of his spirit. He is a giant comet that blazes across the sky, drawing into his orbit all the bits of matter that can feed the flame of his fire. All that can burn with the same fire are drawn in to increase the brightness. This is the guardian. I have emphasized this feeling of action most of all because it predominates the others. Action, then results.
So as we begin,
Mhm.
as we begin to draw near the imaginal realm, we are approaching a territory in which we may have direct access to Shoghi Effendi or Abdu'l-Baha, even Baha'u'llah himself. Remember, this world is known in the Baha'i writings as the Concourse on High, the Abha Kingdom, the Unseen World, the Crimson Ark, the Paradise of Justice, the Verdant Green Land, the fathomless deep of the Kingdom of God, the scene of God's transcendent glory, the celestial kingdom, and the realm of the execution of the degrees and commands of God. If we choose to accept Mr. Sear's view, we can look forward to entering a world distinguished by its swifter vibration, its greater power, and its increasingly clear sense of the path ahead. So, as a last farewell, I thought, well, why don't we just take a look at one of Ibn Arabi's writings? I'm not going to go through it tonight, but I did send it to you the other day, and it's The Celestial Earth. So there were lots of footnotes for this particular one. Ibn Arabi's writings are a vast treasure chest of spiritual guidance. Now that we have investigated his insights into the reality of Al-Khidr, I thought I would leave you with one of his concerning the imaginal realm. It's a short 2-page description of its origins, its vastnesses, its guides, and its multifaceted ability to communicate with its visitors. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, I'm a little over time today. I apologize for that, but I hope you felt that it was worth the time.
Very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very interesting.
So, Jack is already raring to go here. What did you want to say here, Jack?
Raring to go. Well, Mark, I hope I remember all the points that your very inspiring presentation tonight elicited in myself. First of all, I wanted to mention, the station of Abdu'l-Baha, and I wish I could remember the name of the pilgrim that Abdu'l-Baha said this to, but I can't. But anyway, I read it somewhere in the writings. And anyway, this pilgrim in the presence of Abdu'l-Baha mentioned that her brother had passed away. And then Abdu'l-Baha began to describe to this woman what her brother was doing in the worlds beyond.
Mhm.
And she said to him, well, how would you know what my brother is doing in the afterlife? And Abdu'l-Baha reportedly said to her, Abdu'l-Baha is manifest in all the worlds.
Nice.
Now, the next point concerns your very interesting reporting on our hidden spiritual station and unique spiritual identity. I'm glad you mentioned this, Mark, because I haven't heard anybody else mention it, and it's a very deep and profound truth. Now, remember that in the seven valleys, Baha'u'llah says that the mystic wayfarer can reach such a high station that he doesn't even want to mention it because it will scandalize people. So he doesn't mention it. He says if he reveals the true station of the soul in this advanced state, it would cause shock and consternation. So he doesn't mention it. And the Sufis who reach this state mistakenly thought that they were, I'm not exactly sure what the right word is, but not God, but anyway, Mark, maybe you can help me with the word that I'm looking for. But in actual fact, Baha'u'llah said what they were experiencing was not God directly. Nobody can do that and live, like a wood chip would be burned up in the presence of the sun. But he said what they were experiencing actually was the highest station in their own soul.
Mhm.
So that has something to do with what you were teaching us tonight. Now, in the hidden words, the Arabic hidden word number 70, and Vergham knows what the original Arabic says, but this is the way Shoghi Effendi translated the address, and I think it has something to do with this hidden spiritual identity that's particular to each one of us. And it begins with these words, O son of him that stood by his own entity in the kingdom of his self. I think that relates somehow, Mark, to what you were talking about. O son of him that stood by his own entity in the kingdom of his self. This to me refers to something very special about each and every single one of us. And then he goes on to say in that Arabic hidden word, know thou that I have wafted unto thee all the fragrances of holiness, have fully revealed to thee my word, have perfected through thee my bounty, and have desired for thee that which I have desired for myself. Be thou content with my pleasure and thankful unto me. So this is truly mind-boggling, because I think that hidden word from the Arabic number 70, which Vergham has the pleasure of reading in the original, tells us something about this great hidden station that we all have. God knows if we don't find it in this world, perhaps we'll find it in the next. Anyway, Mark, those were some of the things you inspired me with tonight in this very meaningful presentation. Thank you.
That's wonderful feedback. Thank you so much, Jack. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Gee, I'm going to have to go back and look at that hidden word again.
I'm pretty sure it relates to what Ibn Arabi and what you were saying.
Mhm.
Of course, he says the hidden words are a distillation of all the spiritual truth that's gone before, right?
Yep, exactly. Okay.
Thank
Anyone else? Durham, you're ready to say something, I see.
Well, I just want to say that in Arabic hidden words, there are 71, and the one that Jack referred to is 70,
Right.
which is the one before the last one. But it is amazing, the meaning of it. If we understand it, we'll quit this life on earth. Seriously, I mean,
Exactly. That's one of the things I think he was referring to in that, in the Seven Valleys about, he says in the gleanings, if we knew we would blaze out to, and the poor guy who took his own life, who kept bugging Baha'u'llah, show me the next world, show me the next world. When Baha'u'llah said it wasn't, he shouldn't have done that, but yeah. So there are a lot of hidden things that we won't have, just do not have access to, but they're hidden in us potentially. And one of them is the mind-boggling station of the soul, which Baha'u'llah says it can't be fully revealed in this life.
there is a verse by Sa'di, a famous Persian poet. I'll try to translate, although my Persian is not the best, but he says, the station of a man reaches to a level that he will not see nothing but God. Imagine what is the station of humanity. That's Sa'di, who's so famous in his prophecies and all of that.
صد آدمی به جایی که به جز خدا نبیند.
نبیند. Exactly.
Yeah.
بنگر تا چه حد است مقام آدمیت.
Yes. بله.
The station of a human being is very high. Well, wish you all the best. Good night, and thank you very kindly, everybody.
Okay, with that send off, why don't we say good night?
Oh,
night.
okay.
Thank you very
No
much.
other
Good
comments,
night.
Mark?
I don't think so.
Oh,
Thank
That
you
seemed like
very
a good one to go out on.
okay.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you,
very
Linda.
much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Good night, everybody. Khuda
Happy
Hafiz.
Nowruz,
Sabr
everyone.
khair.
Good night, everybody.
Yes, happy Nowruz to everybody.
Eid Nowruz Mubarak.
Happy Nowruz.
That's right, next week.
Yeah.
Do we have a class next week?
No, we do not. I needed to say that. I forgot. I'll send it out. I'll mention it tomorrow.
It
Mark,
was in your email too.
Sorry?
It was in your email too. You emailed next week we don't have a classes.
Yeah. Well,
That's
I'll
right.
repeat it. You have to keep repeating these things.
Nowruz next week, so we don't have a class.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it a lot. Thank
Oh,
you.
you're welcome.
I
Good night,
really look
Hangame.
forward to
Bye-bye.
this.